Is it just me, or are we experiencing a cultural shift where everyone seems to be in this desperate search for God? From the inauguration of President Donald Trump with an opening of a passionate prayer,
Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, we are so grateful today that you will use our 47th president.
to the recent appearance of Wes Huff on Joe Rogan's podcast,
What is your personal belief when it comes to the resurrection? Do you have a belief, or do you just try to interpret the text and try to see what is the message?
As a historian, I do think it is a historical question. You have a guy who objectively lived, he objectively died, and then individuals close to his inner circle claim that they see him not dead.
Right.
Again,
This is a highly unusual activity.
highly unusual.
Right.
to Jordan Peterson promoting his latest book, We Who Wrestle with God, along with his biblical series on Daily Wire Plus,
Self-sacrifice. You offer yourself up in the service of something higher. That's the basis of society. That's the basis of psychological stability. The Christian insistence is that that's the basis of the world.
I'm going to ask you again because I want to be clear. Is what is the God you believe in?
I think that the claim that Christ is the embodiment of the prophet and the laws, I think that's true.
Okay.
Yeah, but
So-
that's complicated. It's very, very complicated. But I think it's true.
So you believe that Jesus was
God?
God?
Yeah.
to famous YouTubers and intellectuals trading atheism for Christianity.
Ian Hersey Ali, welcome to the show.
Alex, thank you very much for having me.
It's been an incredible year for you, coming out as a Christian, dealing with the reactions and criticisms as a result of that. My first question is, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
It seems like our culture is in desperate search for God. And not just any kind of God, but a kind of God that tells us what is right and wrong. God that demands a certain moral living. We're no longer interested in this sort of mystical, new agey meditation along with your chakras kind of God. We're really interested in a God who will point out to us, what are we doing wrong? So the question is, are we returning to the Christian God? And are we experiencing a certain kind of reawakening? And to even use a even stronger language and say a revival of sorts. So in today's video, I want to give you guys 3 reasons why I think we're experiencing sort of the return of Christianity. And then at the end of this video, I want to talk about the great danger. So the number one reason why I believe that we are experiencing this return of Christianity and this deep search for God is because atheism has created a meaning crisis. It's interesting to me that for thousands of years, people have always lived in the context of something greater. They always believed in the divine, that this is only a beginning. How we live our lives in day-to-day matters, that the fact that there is accountability, that death is only a transition. Most of human history didn't believe that, when you die, nothing happens. It's quite the contrary. So it's very interesting to me how atheism has this modern arrogance where we say, for the last 100 years, we're going to believe like there's nothing upstairs. And the truth of the matter is that nihilism is not a very comfortable place for people to be. People, for some reason, have a deep, innate, instinctual feeling that their life matters, that what they do here will truly echo through eternity. By the way, this is Gladiator quote.
Brothers, what we do in life echoes in eternity.
Especially with millennials, Gen Zs, since we've been brainwashed over and over again with this theory of evolution, we're finally coming to the point where we're sort of rejecting that. We're saying, you know what? It cannot be that all that happens here and now is all there is to it. It cannot be that the world is just made of the material, empirical, scientific sort of stuff, that there is a metaphysical, there is a greater story that we're trying to live out here. And my life does have a greater resonance. It translates into a bigger picture. We all know deeply when we look at the world, we look at the created order, we look at how beautifully, magnificently everything was made, from the fine tuning of the universe, that the oxygen levels are at a certain percentage, the fact that the gravitational force is specifically designed for our existence. When we look at this whole universe, it's really hard to think that there is not an intelligent mind, that something came out of nothing. And the whole atheist argument, if there is a powerful and good God, how is it that there's so much evil in the world? That no longer seems to hold true, because you look at this universe, you see God's goodness. You see the fact that despite the dark things, in this world, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of beauty, there's a lot of meaning. And so there is goodness. In fact, if you're going to say there is evil, there has to be goodness because we see it and it's evident. And if there is evil, how is it that we can say that God is to blame for and that we as humans have no part in it, that we somehow are saints when it comes to evil? When in fact, Christianity has a different story and says, we were made in a relationship and then we strayed for God because we had free will and we messed up and we did a lot of things wrong. And this is why the world's messed up. But there is a God who loves us, who still sustains this whole world and wants to be in a relationship with us. Like never before, the Christian appeal that we are fallen and that we live in a fallen universe holds more true than atheistic claim to say, if there was truly a God, there would be no evil, as if we're not partakers of evil. So I think Gen Zs and millennials are waking up to the fact that they were lied through middle school and high school with a theory of evolution, to make it look like it's more scientific, that it's more superior, when the theory of evolution literally is just equivocal of a myth, the fact that we came from some monkeys. And if that's the case, why is still that we still have monkeys and why isn't there's macroevolution to the next thing? People are not buying that. We're awakening where we're just brainwashed and that we were made to believe lies. We no longer seem to agree that all that there is in this world is materialism, is the stuff that we can touch, because we all know the things that we truly care about, love and peace and joy and, being with our loved ones. And all of these things are not of the material world. They're metaphysical things. We have a brain that is organic matter, but we also have a consciousness. And that is something that atheism has no room for. So the number 2 reason why I believe that we are in this deep search for God is because we finally realizing that hedonism is making carnal slaves. That hedonism is not a road to freedom. Having no boundaries, doing whatever you want, whenever you want, with whoever you want, how many times you want, that no longer looks like freedom to us. That doesn't seem to really bring us to liberation. In fact, that's making us more and more miserable. And you see this with pornography, you see this with hookup culture, you see this with OnlyFans, the whole idea of the sexual revolution that we're going to liberate, we're going to do whatever we want and we're going to be finally happy. We're finally realizing that we're not happier. We're more traumatized. We're far more mentally unstable, and that this is not leading us to freedom. We're in deeper shackles of bondage. It's making us addicted and just really have deep levels of self-loathing. Just because you can go on multiple dates with multiple people and sort of just partake in this hookup culture, that's not happiness. That's not creating stable individuals. You're not finding true love that you're searching. So people are looking for a sort of truth that will liberate them, that will give them boundaries, that will give them discipline, that will give them sort of a path to walk upon. Hedonism is truly losing its appeal, and also to bring along the whole political landscape, where we were basically sexualizing kids' childhoods, having drag queens, all of this sexual language for little kids growing up. I feel like we've had enough of that. In fact, I believe that's a big reason why, we voted conservatively. Majority of people voted for Trump is because we realized that, this hedonism that is really now debilitating our kids, where, we're okay with kids going under the knife, being mutilated, changed into different genders and sexes. That's not okay. We're tired of that. People are really looking to, okay, who created us? Who defines what gender is? Who defines what biology is? Is there objective truth? Because this whole relative talk about, we all get to determine our own version of the truth and no longer seems to be able to hold the whole society. So I truly believe that this wave of hedonism is finally catching up with people. So the third reason why I believe that people are in this desperate search for God is because this whole philosophy of self-love has led people down this path of mental instability, isolation, and fragmentation of community. And what do I mean by all that? Now, when I talk about the philosophy of self-love, I'm not talking about, you going to the gym or just eating right or taking time to rest or get away from people for a little bit. I'm talking about this whole philosophy of I am the main character. This whole life is about me. If there's people who I disagree with or family members that I disagree with, I can just cut them off. I don't need to be part of anything that sort of criticizes me or sort of dims my light, because this is my story. This is my life. These are my goals. all of that, people who embrace that kind of philosophy, almost like a religion for their life, only realize that all of that leads to a very selfish kind of living. And because you're so focused on yourself, you will also be focused on all of your negative emotions, and that will lead to self-isolation, that will lead to fragmentation when you don't even realize that your whole life we're made to serve others. We're made to be in harmony with God and serve the people who He put into our lives. And we're really fulfilled when we take the focus off of ourselves and we give it on to others. And that is also how communities are built. So this whole culture of self-love, of, you're the main character, creates very selfish human beings. And then they wonder, why they're unhappy. Then they wonder why they're so isolated, why they don't have real friends, why they're not really part of real communities, people who are not just in there to use you. And you have billions of books. It's all for you to keep looking at yourself rather than taking your eyes off of yourself. And what Christianity teaches specifically is self-sacrifice, is death to yourself, so you can serve God and others better when you put others ahead of yourself. And that is how you actually create real authentic communities. They're living their lives not only before people, but they're living their lives before God. And how they love people is also a reflection how they love God. For centuries, churches were the big institutions that created communities. Churches were the big institutions that helped the poor. It used to be noble to be of service in your community and help other people. Whereas now you have the influencer culture where it's all about you and getting yourself ahead and, cutting off people who don't agree with you and hating people who don't agree with you. So I think this is a big reason as to why we're experiencing this deep search for God and why Christianity specifically is looking more and more appealing to people. Now let's talk about the great danger. I think the great danger with this sort of return of Christianity is that it can look like more of moralism than Christianity, that we can simply replace hedonism with moral Christianity and completely miss the point that Christ was making. The fact that we are sinners, that we're in desperate need of redemption, and the fact that no one can be reconciled to the Father, to God, truly, without accepting Him as a personal savior for their life. There was this chasm before you and God, and only through the sacrifice of Jesus, through the atoning blood of Christ, we were reconciled to the Father. Just becoming a moral person doesn't take away the fact that you need Christ. In fact, it is the moral and religious people who had the hardest time understanding the gospel because they felt like they were good enough. They were not hedonistic pagan people.
Satan is not against good morals. He is opposed to Jesus Christ. A man can have good morals his entire life, yet you and I know he will go to hell when he dies. It is Jesus Christ that everyone needs, and the devil knows this more than all of us.
Dr. Anderson.
Satan's goal is to remove the name of Christ from his commands. And when we do this, people are deceived into thinking that if they live a good life, they will receive God's approval and attain heaven.
I think we can use morals to attract people to the Lord.
Yes, but the ultimate issue in Christianity is the authority of Christ. And the devil is attacking this authority by convincing us to teach morals alone.
So now the pendulum in our culture has swung so much into paganism, hedonism, that we're like, okay, we need to become more moral. So the pendulum is, I feel like, swinging toward moralism. And my fear as a Christian is that we can feel like, as long as we're being a good person and we have this cultural Christianity, that's sufficient. And I think a lot of people like Jordan Peterson, maybe his view is shifting a little bit or whatnot, but they kind of more think of Christ as this archetype of truth rather than truly being God. I know that he had a recent video where he did admit that Jesus was God. Of course, he didn't sound completely sure, like that assuredness that you see somebody who really came to know Christ, but I think he's making his way there. My fear is that we can become these cultural Christians versus these people who were touched by the grace of God, who love God fervently, where Christianity can become sort of this rule book rather than the passion of your whole being and your whole heart, where you are in tune with Christ. And you're not just becoming a Christian so you can be considered a moral person, but you're living out the Christian life because you were transformed by it. You were made a new creation through it. That is the danger, I think, with this sort of shift that we're experiencing currently in this sort of Christianity landscape, and it's so hard to see, is this a true reawakening, or is it us just becoming more culturally Christian, or us also kind of sort of embracing our Christian national roots, perhaps. I don't know. So I do feel like that is the danger, and it is important that we understand that it is not our morality, not our good works that saves us. It is truly what Christ did on the cross, which when we're transformed by that, then of course we are partakers in the good works of the Spirit, obviously. But to understand that it's not like I'm gonna start going to church because I want to be considered a moral, culturally Christian, and the fact that, you know, Christianity has some social utility, you know, it has its sort of benefits, you know, but to honestly understand the message of the gospel and how it transforms one's mind, heart, and vision for their life, that is filled with love for others, sacrifice, and, you know, understanding that true freedom is found in the laws that God gave us. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you're also noticing this shift in our culture and what are your thoughts on it, consider liking this video and also subscribing to my channel if you have not, and I'll see you guys in the next video.